Hey, what's up everybody? So in this video, I will be answering a question by Rain's Empire, or the leader of the guild called Blaze Knights. By the way, Rains, thank you so much for this question. I will make sure to answer your other question, probably by next video. We'll see, I might have something coming next, but once again, thank you so much for taking the time to ask these. I'll make sure to answer these to the best of my ability. So the question essentially goes as follows. What would be your best advice on moving from the average Dauntless player to pro-level Trials player after Reforge, and the weapon board system for the so-called next-gen of Slayers who rarely experience the true grind of what it's like to earn your first sub 3 back in the day, or top 100/top 5 in a solo or team, or tips in trying to get into the next level of the game for them? I've been asked this question many times, not in the context behind how the olden days were much harder, but essentially how one can become closer to pro level from an average perspective. I've done my best to sum it down into some kind of step-by-step process that, by the way, I myself followed when I first started this top 5, top 1 journey, and it worked fabulously for me. I mean, as shown by all my accomplishments in terms of group trials, but keep it with a grain of salt. It's definitely going to be a different journey for everyone, so be open-minded towards your approach. I'll still give you the step-by-step process that's helped me in terms of being able to get to this point, but keep in mind that it's not a key to all things. And one more thing, something that I'd like to emphasize to make sure that everyone understands what they're getting into, because this isn't something that you can just come in and be like, all right, I'm good enough, I'll just come in here and become a legend easy. You're going to need to take a lot of time and effort and focus and diligence in order to even come close to becoming to this level. The gap in between the average player and a player like any of us top players who can go on top 5 like at any point in any given time is massive. It is so freaking big that most people can't even see it, don't even understand it. But it's not impossible. It's just you need to understand why it's so big in order to move on, in order to push for it. But to emphasize it a little bit more, when you're approaching this and when you want to be a pro level trials player, you're going to need to think about the names that you'll be working towards. I'm going to shout out a lot of players right now because I consider them absolute legends, and I'm sorry if I do miss some, but these are the ones that come up at the top of my head right now. But this is just for the sake of whoever is watching and wants to become a pro. You're going to need to think about these players and ensure that you're going to be pushing to compete and play like these guys. Think about playing against the likes of Beta, Spara, Danciop, Devil Dog, Helltrix, Cosplay, Turquoise Bulbul, Cocky Panther, Phoenix Bug Labs, BLS EOTB, Texas Ranger, Exadia, Cosmos BTW, GF Joe 13, Mr. Trails, and pretty much a lot more top players who constantly compete every week. Keep that in mind. You need to understand the weight of how long this journey will be in order to even get to a point where you think you have a chance. But don't worry, like I said in previous videos, as long as you don't give up, you'll always have a chance. So, to begin this step-by-step process, let us enter, I guess, J-Man's University of Thought. First step, in my honest opinion, and something that I personally believe for all people to practice, is that you must specialize in only a small amount of weapons. A lot of people like to come to me and say, I want to be a master of all weapons, or that I want to be a jack of all trades. You see, if you want to become a pro, you can't realistically be absolutely ridiculously good with every single weapon if you keep switching between every single one, trying to become this player who's the ultimate tool for every single team. It's just not going to happen. you're going to spend realistically too much time trying to figure out how to get relatively good with each weapon. And once you get to that point, the meta's already changed and you're going to have to probably figure out a new weapon rework or something. Or maybe there are new approaches to fighting behemoths, so you're going to have to keep learning them for every single weapon, which is unrealistic in nature. For me, I picked two main weapons to specialize in. In the beginning, I was a pike specialist and a striker specialist. Of course, pike wasn't exactly my strongest suit. It was the first weapon that I ever picked up for Dauntless and grinded the entire core game with, but as I gotten more and more pro level, I switched to strikers, and soon that secondary weapon ended up becoming repeaters. I worked really hard to make sure that I understood how to consistently and efficiently perform with strikers and repeaters at a high level. So when I played with my team, I didn't let them down in terms of execution or knowledge towards the weapons. I could theory craft as well as the next guy. Of course, I also spent a lot more time on understanding how to theory craft strategies because that's what I'm essentially known for. But that's a path that most people, or not every single person, wants to take. So if you have questions about theory craft, feel free to ask them in the future. I'll definitely apply all my knowledge to ensuring that I answer that question to the best of my ability as well. But back to the topic, the first step would be to specialize in a few weapons. 2, in my opinion, is a good number. 3 is okay. You see, because I'm not that good with pike, but I can say I can perform extremely well with strikers and repeaters. The next step that I would like to bring up is that in order to be as good as a lot of these top players, you're going to need to understand why they are so good. Not only will you just have to accept that they're a lot better, right? So you can get that ego and pride bullcrap out of the way in the beginning. You're going to need to watch them and see how they perform. And trust me when I say this, you will get a lot from both watching group trial content and solo trial content. There's a different culture and there's a different approach to both fields. One may be weaker in some other aspects, and it applies to both, but you will always get something extremely valuable from understanding how the best players in each field do their thing. Watch them. Understand why they do certain things, whether that be involving repositioning, certain builds, lantern choice, or just overall group composition in terms of weapons. Understand what makes them tick, understand why they do certain things, and in time you'll start to see a certain trend or certain pattern across most teams and most players. There's a lot that comes to it in terms of execution, but the first step is understanding why before you start actually acting upon it. So step 2 is make sure you watch all those YouTube videos of those pros. Make sure you keep track of what they do and why they do it. And from then on out, you can start acting. Which brings us to step 3. Step 3 is where the focus and the hard work starts to actually be a main factor in this journey. In order to compete with the best of the best, you're going to have to make sure you have a solid core, a solid foundation of second nature and instinctive knowledge of behemoths, as well as weapon execution. You see, when I talk about behemoth knowledge, you're going to need to understand how to anticipate a lot of behemoth attacks and respond to them efficiently, ensuring that you're wasting as little time as possible in repositioning or continuing your combo string or anything regarding dishing out as much damage as you possibly can. But in terms of understanding how to be that good in behemoth knowledge and understanding exactly what the behemoth is going to do next, you're going to need to spend some time over in hunting grounds. Well, used to be pursuits. I wish pursuits were still a thing. It would have been a lot easier. But going into hunting grounds solo, and whenever you come across a behemoth that you want to learn, just dodge. Don't attack, just dodge. Watch the behemoth, let the dodge become second nature, and just keep practicing that till it becomes very brain dead to a point where you're not really thinking much. It's like you're kind of just not really like zoning in or not really focusing too hard on dodging. And it will become second nature, an instinct, and you won't really have to think too much. And not only will your dodging be incredibly good, you'll also be able to read a lot of the attacks and know what's coming before you even act. And that's incredibly important to being able to understand a lot of aspects in the top trial scene. Of course, once you get to a point where you've essentially made that second nature an instinct, you're going to need to make your execution second nature an instinct as well. But it will be a lot easier if you take it by step and not try to do both at the same time, right? So after you finish up understanding how to dodge really well and anticipate behemoth attacks, that's when you can start implementing your execution. That's when you can start stringing your combos in between the windows of certain attacks, or understanding that at a certain point when the behemoth is done doing a certain attack, you can start just going absolutely ham in it because you know you have a really high chance of staggering it or breaking apart or etc. to ensuring that there's a part stagger or there's a normal stagger that will give you a window of just all out damage. And that is pretty much my step-by-step process in becoming as close as you possibly can to a pro level player in terms of core foundation. Of course, there is a lot more that goes to it. Keep in mind, this isn't like this isn't like a key to the great halls of epicness or legend. It's going to take a lot of time and it's going to take a lot of experience. And once you master these things that I brought up in my step-by-step process, there's still a lot to learn. You're not going to be a top player yet. You're going to be above average Dauntless player, that's for sure. But will you become pro level? No, not yet. You're going to need to learn a lot more than that. And that comes with experience and time. Understanding why certain strategies work, understanding why certain strategies don't. Understanding how to accommodate for your team or understanding how to accommodate for yourself as a solo player. Understand all these different things that come into play and jump times and all these theorycraft aspects that make teams or solo players perform as efficiently as they possibly can. Under the assumption that they have a really, really good core foundation, behemoth knowledge, execution, and overall mentality. Anyways, guys, once again, thank you so much for watching this video. And Reigns, thank you so much for your question. Don't worry, man, I'll get over to your other question sometime soon. And I really do hope every single one of you has an amazing day. Cheers, everybody.